The wind howled through the jagged peaks like a living thing, carrying with it a chill that bit straight to the bone. It swept across the rocky crags, tugging at coats and twisting scarves into knots, carrying with it an unspoken warning. Below, the narrow valley lay cloaked in shadow, the fading light of dusk seeping into the jagged fissures between mountains. Liam adjusted the strap of his spear across his shoulder and squinted at the cliffs above. The mountains had always been unforgiving, but tonight there was something wrong. Not wrong in the way a storm clouds the sky, or a snowbank threatens a traveler. Wrong in the way a predator watches its prey, patient, intelligent, and utterly silent. Behind him, the other hunters moved cautiously, their boots crunching against the frost-hardened ground. Ilara, quick-eyed and unshakably calm, scanned the slopes, her hand never leaving the hilt of her dagger. Jonas, older than the rest, trudged behind with a pack heavier than his steps, muttering under his breath about Elomans and reckless youth. They were all here for the same reason, glory. Tales of an ancient dragon had reached the villages below, whispers of a beast whose scales were darker than midnight and whose fire could turn stone to ash. But as Liam now realized, glory had a price, and the mountains were eager to collect it. A sudden shift in the wind brought a sound, a scraping, subtle at first, then louder. Liam froze, every nerve straining. It wasn't the wind, or falling rock. It was deliberate, measured, the scrape of claws against stone. He gripped his spear tighter, every muscle coiled like a spring. "Ilara," he whispered, barely moving his lips. "Did you hear that?" She didn't answer at once, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the ridge above them. Then her voice, soft but firm, broke the silence. "I heard. It's not alone." The words hung in the cold air, and Liam felt a chill deeper than the wind. Not alone. Not alone. The mountain was alive with movement, a slow, undetectable shift that made shadows twist and stretch unnaturally. It wasn't just the dragon. They were being watched. The hunters had been hunters for years, but none had faced something like this. A rumble rolled through the valley, low and resonant, vibrating up through Liam's boots and into his chest. He dropped to one knee, searching the cliff faces for the source. Not thunder, not an avalanche. This was something alive, massive, and deliberate. A shadow flickered across the slope, too fast for the eye to follow, and in that instant, Liam realized the truth. The hunter had become the hunted. Ilara crouched next to him, her breath visible in the freezing air. "We need to move," she whispered. Slowly, quietly. But before they could take a step, a glint caught Liam's eye, a flash of scales blacker than the night sky, reflecting the last rays of the sun. He froze. The glint shifted with unnatural speed, darting behind a boulder, then vanishing. His pulse raced, and he swallowed hard. From somewhere above, a low, guttural growl rolled down the mountainside. Not a roar, not yet, but a warning. Liam felt the vibrations through the soles of his boots, a pulse in the very ground. Jonas stiffened beside them, muttering, "By the old gods, it's real. And it's bigger than the stories." The air thickened with tension. Every shadow seemed to breathe, every crack in the rock a potential hiding place for the creature. Liam's mind raced with strategies and escape routes, but the mountains offered none. The paths were narrow, the cliffs sheer, and the river below a jagged sweep of ice and stone. There was no easy way out. "Ilara, stay close," he said, voice low but urgent. "Whatever that is, it's smart. Don't split up." A sudden gust tore through the valley, sending a spray of ice shards across their faces. Liam squinted and caught movement on a ridge high above them, a silhouette, wings folded, scales glinting like obsidian. The creature was watching them, patient, calculating. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but the terrain offered no safety, only a slow, deadly trap. The hunters advanced cautiously, every step deliberate. The scrape of claws sounded again, closer this time, echoing through the rocky canyon walls. It was a sound that spoke of power, of hunger, of a predator that had waited centuries for intruders foolish enough to enter its domain. Liam felt a wave of fear, but fear sharpened his senses. He could hear the subtle shifts of the rocks under the creature's weight, smell the acrid tang of sulfur and smoke on the wind. The dragon, or whatever it was patient. It would let them make mistakes, and then it would strike. Night fell fully over the mountains, and the hunters were swallowed by shadow. Liam's hand tightened on the spear. Somewhere out there, in the blackness, Scales glimmered and eyes glowed like molten gold. The hunt had begun, not for the hunters, but by them. And Liam knew one thing with absolute certainty. When the shadow moved, death would follow. The night had grown heavier, pressing against the hunters like a living weight. Liam's breath came in ragged bursts, mist curling in the frigid air, and the distant peaks seemed to loom closer, dark ridges twisted by shadows into shapes that could be claws, wings, or faces. He kept moving, carefully, every step calculated, but even his trained instincts could not shake the gnawing sense that the mountain itself was against them. "Ilara, did you see it?" Liam hissed, glancing over his shoulder as the group moved along a narrow ledge. Ilara's eyes flicked across the slope above them, sharp and focused. "I saw movement. More than one," she replied, voice low, tense. Her dagger caught the faint light of the moon, and she held it ready. "It's circling, watching, waiting." Jonas groaned behind them. "I should have listened to the old tales. No one survives the peaks of morning. It's a curse, that's what it is. A case." Liam ignored him. Fear was natural, but panic would get them killed. He scanned the cliffs, noting every ridge and boulder, every narrow escape route. But the creature, whatever it was, seemed to know the terrain better than they ever could. Then it struck. From a shadowed overhang above, a massive claw shot out like lightning, striking the ledge just inches from Liam's feet. The rock splintered, sending him stumbling back, heart hammering. A roar ripped through the canyon, a sound that seemed to shake the very bones of the mountain. It was a voice older than memory, a roar that promised death and demanded reverence. "Run!" Ilara shouted, lunging to pull Liam to safety. The sound of rocks collapsing behind them echoed, a deadly chorus. The hunters scrambled along the ledge, narrow stone giving way beneath their feet. Every movement was mirrored by the creature above, a black shape, impossibly large, wings folded tight against jagged scales that glimmered like molten obsidian. Its eyes burned orange, molten pools of intelligence and hunger, locking onto each of them in turn. Liam thrust his spear forward instinctively, aiming for the shadow as it dipped behind a ridge. His arms trembled, but the attack was useless. The clawed limb that had struck the ledge was already moving elsewhere, circling, herding them. The hunters realized, almost simultaneously, that they weren't just being attacked, they were being driven into the mountains, funneled into a trap they could not yet see. "Ilara, Jonas!" Liam shouted. "Down into the canyon. Move!" They leapt from the ledge, the icy wind whipping around them. Rocks tumbled behind, dislodged by the dragon's immense weight. The sound of claws scraping stone followed them like a heartbeat, steady, relentless, impossible to outrun. Ilara caught a glimpse of its wings unfurling in the moonlight. The span was massive, blotting out stars, a shadow moving faster than thought. Its tail, tipped with jagged bone-like spikes, lashed behind it, smashing boulders and sending showers of stone tumbling down toward them. Every instinct screamed that this was a predator evolved to hunt, to plan, to strike, and it had chosen them as its prey. Liam reached a narrow crevice, hand slipping against ice and stone. He looked back. Jonas was behind, struggling to keep up, every step slower than before. The creature swooped closer, a low growl vibrating through the canyon. Rocks shattered under its claws. Liam realized with a sickening clarity that they had nowhere safe to go. The mountain itself had become a weapon in the dragon's hands. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the path ahead, smaller than the main beast but still enormous, with scales that glittered faintly in the starlight. Hatchlings. Liam didn't have time to wonder. The smaller shadows moved like coordinated hunters, driving them toward the heart of the canyon. They were being herded. Not random strikes, strategy. The dragon's intelligence was terrifying. A boulder cracked beside Liam, forcing him to duck, and in that instant, the dragon struck again. The sheer force of the blow sent him sprawling, tumbling down a short slope before he caught himself on the edge of a jagged outcrop. Pain stabbed through his shoulder, but adrenaline kept him moving. "Ilara! Jonas! Keep going!" he shouted, scrambling forward. His spear clattered behind him, useless for now. The sounds of the dragon, its roars, the scraping of claws, the thunder of its tail, filled the canyon, echoing off every wall, a symphony of death. Ilara caught up, dragging Jonas with her. Blood streaked Jonas's arm where a claw had grazed him, but he was alive. For now. They pressed on, hearts hammering, lungs burning, muscles screaming. Every instinct screamed to climb higher, to escape, but the path only narrowed, the canyon walls closing in like the jaws of some colossal beast. Then Liam saw it. The shadow ahead of them stretched across the canyon floor, black scales catching moonlight. The main dragon had landed. Its eyes burned with calculated menace, and its tail swung lazily but with devastating precision, flattening boulders like toys. The hatchlings circled behind, smaller but still deadly, their teeth glinting in anticipation. "By the gods," Jonas whispered, voice trembling. It's too much." "No," Liam said, voice tight with determination. "It's a predator, and we're prey. But we're not done yet." They had survived the first strike, but they knew instinctively that this was only the beginning. The dragon's patience was endless. Its hunger was precise. And somewhere in the shadows, it waited for them to make a mistake. The night closed in around them, colder and darker than before, and the mountains themselves seemed to lean closer. The hunt had begun, and the hunters were already losing. Ears ring. Liam, Ilara, and Jonas crouched behind a jagged boulder, every muscle taut, every breath shallow. The dragon had withdrawn, or perhaps it was waiting, but the air still vibrated with its presence. The faint smell of sulfur and scorched stone lingered, and a low, rhythmic rumble hinted that it had not gone far. Ilara's eyes scanned the cliffs, sharp as ever. "It's here," she whispered. "It's watching us." Liam nodded, his spear clutched tightly, knuckles white. His mind raced, cataloging every movement, every sound, every shadow. The stories of the dragon had never conveyed the intelligence, the precision. This was no mindless beast. It was a predator, an apex hunter, patient and calculating. Jonas shifted, groaning softly. I've hunted bears, wolves, even saber-tooths in my youth," he muttered, voice trembling. "But nothing compares to this. Not in size, not in cunning, not in malice." A movement to their left caught Liam's attention. He froze, heart hammering. Across the canyon floor, a dark shape slithered between boulders, too massive and too fluid to be a shadow cast by moonlight. Its scales glimmered like molten glass in the pale starlight. And then he saw it, the eyes, molten orange, glowing, unblinking. The dragon's gaze fixed on them, and in that instant, Liam felt an overwhelming weight of intellect and hunger. The creature rose to its full height, or rather, full length. Wings unfurled in a terrifying display, stretching wide enough to blot out the stars above. Each membrane shimmered with a subtle, oily darkness, and the claws at the tips dug into stone, leaving deep gouges. Its tail, tipped with jagged bone-like spikes, swept the canyon floor in slow, deliberate arcs, flattening rocks as if to demonstrate dominance. Ilara gasped softly. "It's enormous," she whispered. "Bigger than the legends." The dragon moved with a predator's elegance. Every step, every ripple of muscle, seemed measured, deliberate, and yet fluid, almost like water flowing over rocks. Liam noticed the subtle tremors in the ground each time it shifted, vibrations that hinted at the sheer mass of the beast. This was not just a creature of scales and fire. This was a force of nature, a walking cataclysm, a shadow given form and purpose. And yet, for all its size, there was intelligence in its movements. It circled the canyon slowly, herding the hunters with terrifying precision. Every sweep of its tail, every flap of its wings, forced them closer to the canyon's narrowing heart. It wasn't attacking yet. This was a test, a demonstration of power. The creature wanted them scared, broken, aware of their helplessness. Liam's mind raced. They had no weapons capable of piercing those scales, no shelter strong enough to hold against its claws or tail. The only advantage they had was speed, and even that was uncertain against a predator that seemed to anticipate every move. Then came the sound of movement above, a subtle, skittering, flitting across the cliffside. Liam followed the motion with his eyes and froze. Dozens of smaller shapes, shadows that glinted with the same dark scales as the larger creature, were sliding across the rocks. Hatchlings. The mother dragon had brought them. Not mindless offspring, but coordinated hunters, smaller predators trained by instinct to herd and attack. "Ilara," Liam whispered urgently, "we need to." A sudden roar cut him off, a deep, resonant sound that rolled through the canyon like an earthquake. The dragon had lowered its head, revealing its true face, jaws lined with jagged, serrated teeth, nostrils flaring smoke and embers. Its eyes narrowed, and Liam felt a creeping, primal terror. This was no mere animal. It was a thinking, calculating entity, and it was hungry for them. The roar shattered boulders on the canyon floor, sending debris tumbling like stones in a river. Jonas stumbled back, clutching his arm where a glancing claw had grazed him earlier. Blood seeped through his sleeve, bright against the frost and stone. "By the gods," he muttered, voice barely audible over the dragon's growl. It's thinking. It knows what we're planning." Ilara drew a deep breath, eyes never leaving the dragon. "Then we make it think we're not a threat," she whispered. "We move slowly. We stay together. Don't provoke it." Liam swallowed, heart racing. Every instinct screamed to flee, to sprint blindly, to throw themselves into the icy river below. But the canyon's walls were sheer, and the path was narrow. One misstep, one stumble, and they would not survive. The dragon's wings shifted again, creating a gust of wind that rattled rocks and sent loose stones skittering across the canyon floor. It stepped forward, claws scraping stone with a sound that made Liam's teeth chatter. The hatchlings mirrored every motion, weaving through the boulders, closing in like a living net. Liam realized something horrifying. The creature was teaching them fear, testing their reactions, hurting them with calculated intent. Every beat of their hearts, every subtle move, was noted and exploited. They were not just prey. They were students in the school of terror, and the teacher was merciless. The canyon grew darker as the night pressed on, the dragon's scales glinting faintly, a constant reminder of its presence. Liam's fingers tightened on his spear. They had survived the first strike. They had run, dodged, and barely escaped the hatchling's harassment. But now, confronted with the full shadow of the creature, they understood the truth. They were outmatched in every way. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of determination flared. If this dragon was a predator, a hunter, a thinking force of destruction, then they would need to be smarter, faster, cunning. Every ounce of their skill, every lesson from a lifetime of hunting, would be tested tonight. Liam looked at Ilara and Jonas, their faces pale but resolute. The shadow above, massive and gleaming with deadly scales, seemed to sense it too. It paused, nostrils flaring, eyes narrowing. Then, slowly, deliberately, it shifted its gaze. The hunt was not over. It was just beginning. The shadow loomed, enormous and unstoppable, and the hunters realized with chilling clarity, survival would not be given. It would be earned, or not at all. The canyon seemed to close in on them, walls narrowing, jagged cliffs towering above like the teeth of some colossal beast. Liam, Ilara, and Jonas moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled against frost and stone, but every instinct told them it was futile. They were no longer just in the dragon's territory. They were inside its hunting ground, every crevice, ledge, and overhang a potential death trap. The wind screamed through the canyon like a chorus of wailing spirits, carrying with it the faint smell of smoke and sulfur. Liam's eyes flicked to the cliffs above, and he froze. The shadows were moving, dozens of smaller figures sliding along the rock faces, glinting with obsidian scales under the moonlight. Hatchlings, but not just young, clumsy beasts. These were predators, coordinated and intelligent, trained by instinct to harass, herd, and isolate prey. Ilara, stay close. Liam hissed, tugging her hand as they pressed against the canyon wall. They are surrounding us. Ilara's eyes were sharp, calculating, scanning every angle. The mother's out there too, she whispered. She's not just hunting, we're being driven. Look at how they move. It's strategy, not instinct. They're hurting us. Jonas groaned behind them, blood seeping through a torn sleeve where the dragon's claws had grazed him earlier. I've fought beasts before, he muttered, voice shaky. But this is like facing the mountain itself. The hunters reached a narrow passage between two sheer rock faces. It was barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. Liam's mind raced. One wrong step and the dragon's tail could crush them. One misjudged movement and a hatchling could snap a bone. They edged forward carefully, using the canyon walls for cover, their every movement mirrored by the smaller shadows circling above. A sudden rumble reverberated through the rocks. Liam's heart lurched as he looked up. The mother dragon had returned, landing atop a ridge with terrifying grace. Its wings unfolded slowly, blotting out the stars, and every muscle rippled under jagged black scales. Its eyes burned molten orange, unblinking and calculating. Each breath it exhaled carried a faint heat, a whisper of smoke curling from its nostrils. The canyon floor shook with the force of its landing. Loose stones rattled down the slope, creating a cascade of deadly debris. Liam grabbed Alara and Jonas, pushing them back against the wall. They pressed themselves low, hearts hammering, watching as the dragon prowled, scanning the narrow path like a hunter testing its prey. And then, the tail swept. Jagged spikes smashed against the canyon walls, sending showers of rock tumbling toward them. Liam barely dodged, rolling to the side, and a stone grazed his shoulder, cutting through cloth and skin. Ilara's dagger flashed in the moonlight as she struck at one of the hatchlings, but it was faster, slipping between boulders and hissing with frustration before disappearing into the shadows. Jonas cursed, stumbling as another boulder hit the ground nearby. "We're trapped," he yelled, voice cracking. "There's no way out." Liam clenched his jaw. "There's a way," he said, voice firm despite the terror clawing at his chest. "We have to use the canyon itself. Its twists, its cliffs. We force the mother to follow, and we stay just ahead of her. Every step counts. Don't panic, don't split up, don't hesitate." The dragon's roar cut through the night, a sound that shook loose rocks and made the canyon tremble. The hatchlings mirrored the mother's movement, darting between rocks, herding them with terrifying precision. Liam realized that the mother wasn't just hunting. They were being tested, toyed with, educated and fey. Every instinct, every hesitation was noted and exploited. As they advanced, Liam's foot slipped on ice, sending him sprawling against the canyon wall. A hatchling darted toward him, teeth flashing. He swung his spear, barely grazing it, and the creature hissed before retreating into the shadows. His chest heaved, and blood dripped from a shallow cut on his arm, mixing with sweat and grime. "Ilara, now," he whispered urgently. She nodded, eyes wide, and pushed Jonas forward. They moved as one, a tight formation, pressing through the narrow passage. But the canyon was working against them. Loose rocks gave way underfoot, every turn a potential death trap. And the dragon above, patient, intelligent, unrelenting, watched every step. Then came the unthinkable. A rock slide from the cliff above sent boulders crashing down, separating Jonas momentarily from Liam and Alara. The mother's roar followed, a low, resonant growl that seemed to shake the canyon itself. Liam's stomach sank, one wrong move, and the canyon would become a tomb. But even in the terror, Liam felt a spark of determination. The dragon had the advantage, yes, but it wasn't invincible. They were alive, still moving, still thinking. Every instinct, every lesson from years of hunting and surviving, had led to this moment. They had survived the first strike, and now, if they could just navigate the canyon, if they could just stay alive until dawn, maybe, just maybe, they could live to see another day. The canyon walls pressed closer, darkness swallowing the path ahead. The dragon's shadow flickered across the stone, a living nightmare. Hatchlings scuttled ahead, blocking escape routes, herding them like livestock. The mother waited above, patience endless, hunger calculated. The hunters pressed forward, hearts pounding, breath ragged, aware that one misstep could mean death. The descent into terror was far from over. It had only begun. And somewhere deep in the blackness of the canyon, the dragon watched, waited, and smiled with a predator's satisfaction. Dawn had yet to touch the peaks, but a faint gray light crept over the canyon, casting long, jagged shadows across frost-covered stone. Liam, Ilara, and Jonas pressed forward, exhaustion gnawing at their limbs, every muscle screaming from the relentless descent. Behind them, the sound of the dragon's wings beating against the cliffs echoed like thunder, a reminder that escape was still uncertain. The narrow canyon floor widened slightly, revealing a sheer drop into the icy river below. Liam's stomach lurched. It was a long fall, but it was the only possible escape. The dragon blocked the path ahead, wings unfurled, eyes burning molten orange. Its tail swept the stone with lethal precision, flattening boulders and tearing grooves into the canyon floor. "Ilara," Liam hissed, voice low but urgent, "this is it. There's no other way." She nodded, tightening her grip on her dagger. Jonas leaned heavily on a jagged rock, bleeding from several shallow wounds, face pale and drawn. I can't swim that far," he panted. "If we jump, we'll die." Liam shook his head. "We die if we stay. The dragon has the advantage here. We jump together, or not at all." The dragon growled, a low, guttural rumble that reverberated through the canyon walls. Its eyes narrowed, nostrils flaring smoke. The hatchlings circled above, smaller but no less deadly, their teeth glinting in the gray light. It had anticipated their moves, herded them precisely to this point. The hunters realized that everything up to now, the first strike, the canyon chase, the herding, had been calculated, designed to force them to the cliff's edge. Liam took a deep breath, muscles tensing. He had hunted dangerous beasts before, but never one like this. The dragon wasn't just a predator. It was a strategist, a thinking entity, and it had used the canyon itself as a weapon. But the instinct to survive, to adapt, to fight, was stronger. "On my mark," Liam whispered. 3, 2, 1. They sprinted forward as one, feet pounding the stone, hearts hammering. The hatchlings lunged, snapping at their heels, but Liam swung his spear with precision, knocking one into the canyon wall. It hissed and retreated, more cautious now. Ilara grabbed Jonas, pulling him forward as they neared the cliff's edge. The mother dragon roared, wings flaring, creating a gust of wind that nearly sent them tumbling backward. Liam's boots slipped on loose stone, but he kept moving, adrenaline carrying them closer to the drop. "Jump!" he shouted. They leapt together. Air rushed past them, biting and cold, the icy river below roaring to meet them. The dragon's claws swiped at the edge of the cliff, missing by mere inches, and its roar echoed like an accusation, a promise that it would not let this escape go unpunished. The cold hit them like a shockwave as they plunged into the river. Water surged around them, icy and merciless, pushing and pulling. Liam fought against the current, muscles screaming, while Ilara kept hold of Jonas, guiding them toward the riverbank. Rocks scraped their arms and legs, and every movement felt like fighting against 1,000 invisible claws. Above them, the dragon roared again, its massive form a shadow against the gray dawn. It circled, wings cutting through the canyon air, but it could not follow them into the river. The hatchlings hesitated at the edge, unwilling or unable to enter the frigid torrent. For the first time in hours, the hunters had a fraction of safety, though it was fragile and fleeting. They dragged themselves onto the riverbank, shivering, blooded, exhausted. Jonas collapsed against a boulder, gasping for breath. I thought we'd die," he said, voice trembling. Ilara knelt beside him, checking his wounds. "We nearly did," she admitted, voice tight. "But we're alive. That's what matters." Liam looked back toward the canyon. The dragon was still there, wings partially folded, eyes blazing with intelligence and fury. It had lost this round, but it had made its point. The hunters were prey, clever and resilient, but still prey. The canyon was littered with rocks and scorched stone, evidence of the hunt, a monument to the dragon's calculated power. A wave of respect and fear washed over Liam. This creature was older than memory, stronger than legend, and yet, somehow, they had survived. It had tested them, broken them almost, but it had also reminded them of the fragility and the strength of life. The mountain, the dragon, the shadows, they were all part of a world that was far bigger and more dangerous than any village tale could convey. "Ilara," Liam said quietly, "we survived, but we can't stay. We move now. We leave the peaks of morning before it decides to hunt again." She nodded, helping Jonas to his feet. "Agreed. But we'll remember this. Always. And maybe we'll live to tell the story." The river carried them away from the canyon, cold and relentless, but alive. Behind them, the dragon's shadow receded into the cliffs, massive and indomitable. The hatchlings lingered, curious but restrained, waiting for the mother's signal. The mountains fell silent again, but Liam knew better. The shadows would always watch. The hunt would continue in other forms, and the dragon would remain, patient and eternal, in the jagged peaks. For now, though, they had survived, and in the face of something older, stronger, and far more intelligent than themselves, survival was victory enough. Liam, Ilara, and Jonas climbed the riverbank, soaked, blooded, and exhausted, but alive. The first light of dawn illuminated the frozen peaks, and for a fleeting moment, hope shone through the shadows. The mountains were vast, dangerous, and unyielding, but they had faced the darkness, and endured. The shadow had been revealed. The hunters had been tested, and for now, at least, they had lived to see another day.